Hello, and welcome to Longwood GradCast, Beyond a Degree. I'm your host and Assistant Dean of the College of Graduate and Professional Studies, Dr. Sarah Tanner Anderson. In this series, we'll dive deep into the stories of Longwood University's graduate and professional studies alumni, students, and faculty who are achieving remarkable success. Whether you're an aspiring graduate student, a proud alum, or simply curious about the extraordinary journeys our Longwood graduates take beyond their degree, this podcast is your backstage pass to the transformative power of education coupled with determination. Get ready to be inspired, motivated, and awed by stories that prove there are no limits to what a Longwood Lancer can achieve. Hello, and welcome to our final Longwood GradCast episode of this season. I'm your host, Sarah Tanner Anderson, and today we have the pleasure of interviewing Quincy Goodine, another double alum from Longwood University's Counselor Education Master's Program. Quincy is currently the Associate Director of Multicultural Affairs and Leadership Development here at Longwood, where he's deeply involved in various student support programs and initiatives. We'll explore how his counseling degree has opened doors to a diverse and impactful career, supporting and empowering our students here at Longwood. Welcome to the GradCast, Quincy.
Hey, thank you so much for having me. No pressure at all that I'm on the last episode, but I'm excited to be on with you all. Thank you so much.
We are so excited to have you, mostly because you're just such a ray of sunshine and such a genuine personality. Can't think of anybody better to close out our first season. So, Quincy, we'll go ahead and dive right in. And from what I understand, you have just had an incredible journey to Longwood here at Longwood, first starting as an undergraduate student in 2012, staying here for your master's degree in counselor education, and now, and believe it or not, over 10 years later, you're serving as the Associate Director of Multicultural Affairs and Leadership Development. Tell me about your journey. Can you share some of your highlight reel with us today?
Yeah, absolutely. It has indeed been a journey. And whenever I get a chance to have more candid conversations about my journey to Longwood and being here, I tend to say at first, being a young 17, 18-year-old high school student, I say that there wasn't a lot that attracted me to Longwood, especially being from Richmond. You got the other big universities around. But when I got here, there was definitely a lot that made me stay, So got here, bright eyed and bushy tailed in 2012, and just haven't been able to leave since. I've worked in a lot of different areas across the university, so I've seen a lot of different things, and I think it all has helped morph me into the professional that I try to show up as every day.
You mentioned that you've had lots of roles here. So you began first as an admissions counselor here at Longwood and then transitioned through various roles, ultimately leading you to where you are now in multicultural affairs. So what inspired you to make those transitions, and how did your experiences in education contribute to your development?
Absolutely. That's a long story, but I'll try to keep it brief. Coming to Longwood, there was a lot that was going on, but I didn't necessarily see myself represented in certain areas, even at the student level, whether it be clubs, organizations, whatever the case may be. And so that kind of led me to feel some of the things that I see a lot of students who I work with can turn to the same sort of space of I'm having a hard time finding and creating and developing my community. So I'm going to leave. I'm going to go to an HBC. I want to go to a more metropolitan university. And I think when I have the opportunity to work with them, I get to share my story. And that story is that instead of leaving and going to other institutions, I chose to stay and make Longwood, at least what I hope I did, try to leave Longwood better than when I found it when I first got here. So I joined a couple of clubs and organizations, that being the Black Student Association, now known as Change, but at that time it was the Student Diversity and Inclusion Council, sort of a precursor to Change. Yeah, I've been here that long. And through that work, I was able to not only make a difference, lead protests for some national movements. I got to work with some tremendous students, some tremendous administrators to get our first ever student statement of diversity and inclusion drafted. And I'm blessed to say it's up on walls all over the university now. So that's really cool to see. So yeah, I think that kind of sparked my journey, understanding what it is to engage in equity work and engage in work that creates a more inclusive environment for all, not just Black or brown students, but for all students. And so along that journey, as I'm finding different ways to see what the quote unquote work is, I began to see, oh, that student affairs is an avenue. And you can continue engaging in the same kind of work that the administrator that I'm working with, and that I could do that, so to speak. And so my first sort of dipping my toe into the waters of working in the higher education was that experience as an admissions counselor. So not quite student affairs, but definitely still working with a lot of different areas of campus just so we can put knowledge out there to future and potential lancers.
I think that your journey has been just a fantastic one to watch it unfold and to move into different roles and the ability to show up in spaces and make a difference. And I thank you for that. I know our students thank you for that. And as your colleague, I appreciate the fact that you've stayed here at Longwood and you've made it your mission to really keep driving that work forward. I certainly don't want to put words in your mouth, but I feel like something really unique here about Longwood is just the sense of family and community that we've been able to create. And so you mentioned moving from different places throughout the university. And I'm wondering, how has networking and maybe collaboration or mentorship played a role in your progression from role to role in your leadership development?
It's been very interesting. I will say when I was an admissions counselor, we were in a place of transition, just to be quite honest with you. I think that toward the end of my year or so in admissions, we had just gotten our dean who has gone on to do some amazing things. He was Jason McNair Falk, who I still keep in contact with every now and then here. So he served as a tremendous mentor, but there's been so many folks. But I would say Associate Vice President now, Cheryl Steele, Assistant Dean Jonathan Page, Dr. Monique Bates, who was tremendous over here in RCL. All of them just guided me through the ropes. And as I was trying to find my way in student affairs and navigating being a super young professional who was serving in an administrator role among peers and folks who I was just in classes with, that guided me through those ropes. So it's been tremendous. And now I love the fact that it's coming full circle. I'm now working at an institution and I'm seeing folks who I watched come up through their freshman year until now working at Longwood University. One person that comes to mind is the amazing Phil Robinson. He's awesome. And I know he's going to do some amazing work just getting his feet wet working at the institution. But I love the fact that I'm in this position and I get to pay it forward.
I love those full circle moments. They happen so often here at Longwood. And I think that does go back to that sense of family and paying it forward. You mentioned being in this role now and the work that you're doing. Can you tell me a little bit about your key responsibilities in your current role as the director of the Office of Multicultural Affairs?
Absolutely. When I break my roles down into kind of two main buckets, one, I get to work with a lot of the personnel, and then the other bucket is the programs. So I am the advisor of our Change Coalition, and I'm throwing acronyms out there, but Change is essentially our culturally based coalition. So all of our identity-based, religious-based, culturally based clubs and organizations are part of a coalition that we call Change. And we meet on a regular basis, just talk about how things are going in their organizations, how things are looking for them across campus, doing some work with upper level administration, things of that nature. But I get to work with those amazing students. I work with our bond mentors, which is another acronym I'm throwing out there, but that's a new student transition program for incoming students of color, BIPOC students. And I work with our interns. Since I've been working with the interns, they've all been phenomenal. This past year, I got to work with about 5 or 6 tremendous students who just wanted to work with the office, whether it be for credit or just because they liked working with Quincy, but they were phenomenal. So I get to work with a lot of the personnel, get them ready and trained to go and set the pace for them. And then on the flip side of that, I get to lead the charge in our programs. So some of our staple programs are our MLK Week of Service, so that service challenge, and then putting together the other components of that week. We have a tremendous leadership series that we named Multicultural Leadership Series. Again, taking those students who are in change and giving them some more leadership development, organizational development kind of aspects. And I'm working with our Center for Career Success as we push that forward. We have a Get on the Bus initiative, which is essentially an opportunity out of the Office of Multicultural Affairs to get students onto other college campuses to think about grad school. And don't worry, we have not forgot about Longwood. Y'all are definitely on our list to keep our students aware of opportunities. We're actually partnering with them on a grad week coming up in the fall, so stay tuned. But yeah, personnel and programs, that is what I like to call myself.
You mentioned one of your favorite aspects of your current role is working with the students you've met, watching them grow over the years. So, might you share a particularly rewarding story and experience maybe that stands out that you've had with a student as they've grown?
Yes, man, there's so many. I would say I have to go back to one of the first students that I actually was able to cultivate a really meaningful relationship with. My first year after working in admissions, it was a young lady named Erin Young. She was one of our interns my first year out. So I'm learning, she's learning, we're just learning together side by side. And just to see the growth that she had, and I'm not sure if she's working in student affairs specifically, but I know she's engaging in some equity and inclusion work out in the Boston area. But I think just to see where we were both at when we met and to look at where we're at now, especially her, she's doing some tremendous work. She went to a phenomenal graduate school, has had some tremendous opportunities, and she was getting her feet wet working with our office. Self-exploration, identity development stage. And now just trying to see that she's made the choice to do some awesome stuff. It's amazing. And she's just the first of many that I learned from, honestly. And I think that's something that I pride myself on being able to do as well. Learn from the students that I come in contact with.
I think that's fantastic. And I'm sure that they learned so much from you, Quincy. You're such a good shepherd of ideas and collaboration. And so I'm sure they would say the very same of you. So, how do you stay connected with your students that you've worked with over the years once they leave the nest and go out and do great things?
I think it starts by the relationship that I cultivate with students when they're here on campus. I pride myself on not being a stuffy professional.
Me too.
I try to be relatable, right? So I'm not that much older than some of these students. And so just trying to be relatable. We don't always have to talk about the big heavy issues that are going on. How are your classes going? Did you watch the game last night? Oh, what did you get into? Or things like that. Of course, there's boundaries and stuff like that. But I try my best to make sure that I'm approachable about anything. I've talked to students about relationship issues. I've talked to students about class issues, anything. I just pride myself on being able to adapt to whatever situation walks through the door. That allows them to see our area as a place where they can come and be more relaxed and be more authentic. And I think that really translates. And a lot of the time, it translates into folks staying connected even after they graduate, which for me, that's the biggest award or reward that you can get.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And I think that the phone call, the email, the text message, you're still on their mind. And that feels good because they're still on yours. I love that, Quincy. You mentioned just a ton of things that you're involved with and building relationships and then sustaining those relationships with your students over all these many years. So this is a question that we've asked to many of our participants in GradCast, but how do you balance it all? And particularly with you, you have involvement in various groups that take up much of your time, but also building those relationships and then the day-to-day work in the Office of Multicultural Affairs and Leadership Development. How do you balance it all, Quincy?
I'm still learning, But I think after this past year, I had a tremendous opportunity to gain some experience on our retention task force, which is a pretty significant detail for our institution. But I also was tapped to start doing some more heavy lifting in terms of our quality enhancement plan, our university's QVP. And so I think moving forward, I'm going to have to learn the art of saying no, which is difficult when you want to do all the things and you want to have your hand in the pot and get stuff done because they're all tremendous opportunities. I think I'm at the point now where I have to start carving out that path of okay, what do I want my time to look like? How am I going to accomplish all of these things? So I think moving forward, I'm going to have to learn the art of saying no or seeing if there are ways that I can contribute that are more in alignment with the time that I actually have. And self-care. Like I thought before I got my degree, I was like, self-care, what is that? But now I'm realizing that you have to push away. You have to take that time for yourself. And quite frankly, the work is plentiful. So it's not going to go anywhere, whether it be for OMA, whether it be for these programs, whether it be for the QEP, whether it be finding different ways to retain different groups of students. That goalpost is going to always be moving. So you're always going to have work to show up to. So I think just keeping that in mind and finding a cutoff time. I used to be the professional that was here until 8:30. I remember one time I showed up for a meeting that started at 9 o'clock at night and I did not live close at the time. but finding some time to say, hey, you know what? I've done what I can do for today. I'll show up tomorrow and it'll be here. We'll get it done. So saying no and having those hard and fast boundaries and just knowing that you'll get the work done.
I think all of that is great advice and something that most of us should take to heart, especially as we continue to grow in our own leadership development. Quincy, you mentioned a number of different initiatives you've been working on over the past couple of years. And so I'd love to talk a little bit more about these initiatives because I think they're so incredibly important to Longwood and our community here. So the first one, you mentioned Bond.
Yes.
Could you tell us a little more about the Bond program and particularly how it's impacting our historically underrepresented students here at Longwood with that transition piece to college life?
Absolutely. So BOND is an acronym that stands for Beginning Our New Direction. And it was a program that we tried a few years back, but for a variety of reasons, it fell flat. And so Jonathan, Paige, and myself just said, hey, we know this is a need. Let's retool and let's bounce back. Rebranded it, and now it's doing well, I would say. I want to knock on wood because we're going into year 2. But I think when we look at the experience that folks had last year, many of them turned around and are mentors now. So how it works is that we partner with our folks over in enrollment management and admissions to populate a list of students who are interested in coming to Longwood who fall into the category of historically marginalized or underrepresented. We then make them aware of our program. And our program is really centered around resource sharing, resource building, and community building as well. And we really want to highlight the fact that as we're reaching out to these students, we're not looking at them from a deficit perspective, rather understanding that Longwood, much like a lot of other institutions, is predominantly white. So for students who are coming from these backgrounds, coming to Longwood and finding community might be a little bit more difficult. I think about my experience coming in as a young 18-year-old student. It took me a little while. And so I was thinking not only of my story, but hearing stories of other students talking about the same thing. And I'm just like, man, your story sounds a lot similar to mine from 10 years ago. Let's see what we can do. So when we're planning, it is our friends over in RCL, again, huge collaborator, our friends over in enrollment management, our friends throughout student engagement, just putting together an initial first 4 days that happens before New Lantern Days for folks just to get in, find community, hear about some organizations, hear students share their experiences and how they overcame and how they're still here as a junior or senior and how they've been successful. And then throughout those first 4 days, we also get them in front of offices that we know are going to be a huge help that they might not necessarily find on their own. So our Center for Career Success, Academic Success, Financial Aid, all of the folks who we know our students need to know, at least have a familiar and friendly face when you go into those spaces. Hey, this is a person that I've met previously and I know they can help. They were nice and welcoming during our Bond program. I feel like that's a short synopsis of all that we try to cram into Bond. And this year, we're trying to build out the remainder of the year. So have some more touch points for our cohort of students as time goes by throughout their first and second semester. And every student that comes into the program is matched up with a second, third, or fourth year, or even fifth year student who has volunteered to be a mentor. So you got folks who are really interested in pouring back into our incoming class and also understand what it is to be able to have community when they come in.
Well, what an incredible resource for our students and an opportunity, too, for our students to give back through that mentorship piece. I think that's really tremendous. But you're also a member of the Change Coalition. Can you tell us a little more about Change and what those key objectives are aimed at addressing issues facing our culturally based clubs and organizations?
Yeah, man, I'm going to try to remember the acronym for Change.
You didn't know there was a quiz.
Yeah, I know, right? I would have had my little cheat sheet right next to me. But change stands for community, humanity, advocacy, networking, grace, and equity.
Get it, Quincy. You
Yes.
knew it.
Ooh. I hope I got that right. But it sounded right, like
It
sounded
sounds good.
good. And that was born out of we had these two sort of bodies that existed when I was here that kind of went belly up due to COVID, just due to change of leadership, things of that nature. So it was the Student Diversity and Inclusion Council, and it was our President's Roundtable. Change is now the executive board members who, by choice, choose to be on the Change coalitions. We've got representation on SGA now and all of that. So we're moving right along. But these are the folks who come together on a weekly basis and talk about the issues that are facing their organizations, whether it be something that's happening at the institutional level, whether it be something that's happening just because they're having a hard time finding numbers, having a hard time programming. We allot time to just come together and just debrief and talk. In these past couple of years, they have taken on a bit of an activist role, but as a bit of a student activist myself, I certainly encourage folks to make their voices heard and to make their opinions known. But what I also encourage them to do is that it's easy to get on a table and raise the flags and blow the whistles and talk about all of the things that are going wrong. It's the hard work is coming to the table and saying, hey, let's come together and work on some solutions. So while this is a group of students who has no problem getting active and letting folks know, hey, we too are part of Longwood and we want to make sure that our experience is that of our peers. This group has also learned to be very collaborative in that mindset as well. So I think step one was letting folks know, hey, we need some change, no pun intended. But I think the next step is now working with the President Reeves, the Cam Pattersons, the Provost Smiths to say, hey, what can we do to get some things going that will not only better our experience as students of color or students of marginalized and minoritized backgrounds, but all students. The suggestions that are coming forth are things that will just push Longwood forward as an entire institution and not just better the experience of a small few students.
And I think we have long been known as an institution developing citizen leaders and having these organizations, you mentioned, bringing people not just to the table, not just sharing concerns, but offering solutions. I think that's really key. And I appreciate the work that you have done and you are engaging in with our students. I think it's really meaningful work. So thank you for that.
Thank you very much. I give it all to the students. They are phenomenal. And I'm happy to be able to watch the growth. Yeah.
Absolutely. So I'm wondering, as I'm listening to you share your story and knowing a little bit about your pathway, how did your time in your master's program in counselor education prepare you for the work you're engaging with programs like Bond and Change?
Man, it definitely changed the way that I listen. I think now I listen not to be the sage or provide wisdom, but sometimes people just want to have a place to come and talk about what their experience has been like. They want to be able to share. They want to be asked questions about what they feel like they might need. And so I think going through our program here definitely gave me a new perspective on active listening, listening with your eyes, your ears, and your heart. I think I definitely listened a little bit differently. But I think on another side of that coin, I think it also prepared me to be prepared for whatever. I've walked students over to CAPS based on some conversations. I've helped students fill out some reports based on things that we've discussed. Talked to LUPD about some things based on some things that we've discussed. And I really think that counselor education program prepared me to be able to manage my emotions as you're sitting here taking in these stories, these experiences, and understanding that you've been trusted. But on the flip side of that, a lot of the times the students are just wanting to talk to you, the person, about it and not realizing I'm a mandated reporter or I can't just have this conversation. So I think it also prepped me in gently having that conversation and saying, hey, I'm so appreciative of the fact that you felt comfortable sharing this. I want you to know that if we continue to talk, here's some things that are going to happen. However, I'm with you every step of the way. You can continue to keep talking, but I want you to know that while I'm listening, there are some things that are going to have to keep going. But I don't think that I even was thinking about working with students on that level before getting into a program like that. Yeah, it really helped. I think it helped me take my professionalism and the way that I can engage with students to a different level. Laughing and joking and talking about the Celtics winning the championship is one thing. It's another thing when they come in, it's a bit more serious.
Yeah, I can imagine. And so I guess I'm wondering, what are some of those key challenges that you've encountered in this role? So you mentioned sometimes students come and they want to talk to Quincy, and it's because you're likable, you're charismatic, and I think people do connect with you in that way. Are there other challenges that you've faced in this role as you've tried to better support students, and how might you have overcome them?
I think one of the major lessons was that imposter syndrome. Right. If I got this role, if I started at Longwood when I was 23 or 24, I'm literally standing in front of folks talking about community engagement, leadership development with folks that I was in school with, in organizations with a few months or even a year or so prior to that. So I think developing that professional bone and recognizing that these are your friends, these are your peers, but you're now at work. And so what does that boundary look like? What does that need to look like? And I think once I established that, it became a lot easier because I'm taking myself more seriously, which I think allows others to recognize that, hey, I'm cool, I'm likable, but I'm also here in this professional role as well. So I think, again, shout out to those mentors who pulled me aside and showed me the ropes on some things and saw that I needed some guidance on structuring these boundaries because you don't want to be fake towards your people who are your friends or you were just cool with and things like that. I think so many gems come to mind when I think about how I overcame some of these challenges. Love our students, right? But I think sometimes it's important to recognize that there's one side, there's another side, and somewhere in the middle, there's the truth. And I think probably earlier on, I was encouraging students, if this is what happened, then you need to go talk to the dean and you need to go do this and talk to the provost. And instead of thinking, okay, there's probably another side to this that might make this thing make a lot more sense. So I think taking a step back and still engaging in active listening and asking questions about that experience because it's real for that person, but also probably doing a little bit of homework yourself and just figuring out what might have actually happened and then providing probably more helpful advice once we've got the full picture of what actually took place. So I think those two things really propel my career.
So Quincy, you mentioned earlier very briefly that you were involved in the university's QEP. So for our listeners who don't know what that means, can you tell us a little bit about the QEP and how you've been able to really lead that effort?
So the overarching focus of our QEP is post-graduation success for our students. Obviously, that's a little broad. That could look like a lot of things depending on who you ask what success is. So how we're attacking that and how we're looking to achieve that is by focusing on two sort of different avenues as we see students through their time at Longwood. One of them is life design. So we're encouraging students to understand that there's no one right way to do college or to do life. We encourage them to prototype and for that prototype to not work and to come back to the drawing board and try something else until they find that thing that works for them in that moment. Because hopefully throughout life, you'll continue this process of designing and redesigning your life. And then on the flip side of that coin, we've got career everywhere. So trying to embed career readiness components into a variety of facets of Longwood and student experience. So looking to sort of streamline internship experiences, student employment experiences, things of that nature. For students who want to apply to be a mentor, to be an intern in our office, we ask that they not only sign up for an interview, but apply and submit a resume. So things of that nature, kind of sort of like what you would do in life after Longwood, right? And so that's a snapshot of kind of what we're trying to do with the QEP. There's a few other things that we are looking to do, sort of a micro internship, looking at sort of what advising could look like for our students from the faculty component, a few different areas that'll roll out as the years go on. But for right now, we're looking at sort of doing some life design sessions and focusing on this career everywhere component. And I think, again, like I said, as the years roll on, we'll roll out some other ideas that we've got.
Well, that sounds like an amazing opportunity for our students to be reflective and for our colleagues to really work with our students in planning out what their lives may look like beyond Longwood. So thank you for your work with that. And also with your work at all the organizations, all the different initiatives you've been involved with and still continue to lead and guide here at Longwood. But I guess I'm wondering, which one holds the most personal significance to you and why?
Put me on the spot.
I know. And also, you love everyone and everyone loves you. But just what has had the most significance to you and why?
Man, I have to say, it's a toss up between being able to work very closely with change and being able to lead the Sankofa's, the leadership development series that we've got. I say change because I gotta say, I'm a little jealous. I wish we would have had like change in this current iteration when I was here as a student. I can only imagine with the phenomenal peers that I had, the phenomenal organizational leaders that I had, what we could have done on campus. I think we got a lot done with sort of a makeshift change. And these students are all like, they're so fun. They're really cool. They've got so many tremendous ideas. We kick off the year with the Clark House cookout up at the Clark House over behind the Health and Fitness Center. Yeah, I mean, there's so many wonderful things. So it's awesome just kind of work with these students. They definitely keep me young. And then the Sankofa Leadership Series, when we look at sort of the combination of life design and career everywhere, it's an opportunity for us to impart on students that you're not just a president, a chairperson, a treasurer, a secretary. You are engaging in records management work, right? You're engaging in managing a budget of X amount of dollars. You're a president who is providing strategic leadership and guidance for this organization. So beginning to let them know that this is a part of you developing a professional identity. While it might be a passion of yours, you may care deeply for this organization. You're also developing into something. You're gaining skills and traits and competencies as you're in these roles. So I think those two are my favorites.
Thank you for sharing that and going back and appreciating that. Gosh, I wish I had something like this when I was a student. It just really speaks to the work that you're doing now and how you've really taken that on. You mentioned you didn't just leave. You didn't, go somewhere else. You sought it out here. And not only did you seek it, you grew it. And so knowing that you are working so hard to ensure that students do have those resources and opportunities to see themselves as leaders and to grow that leadership, I think is hugely important. And I guess I'm also wondering, you've done so much in your time here. What do you see as potential growth and maybe some development in multicultural affairs moving forward? Like, what might the next 10 years look like for you and our students?
So my hope is that someday I will be Dr. Quincy Goodine.
Well, yes.
Yes. I hope that one day I will be Dr. Quincy Goodine. And with that, I hope that there will be opportunities for me to kind of move up and find opportunities. I haven't really thought of a title or anything like that. I probably should, engage in that life design or, make up a title or something that I want to shoot for. But I think overall, wherever I land, I want to be in a position or role, an area that allows me to kind of find a perfect marriage where I can still have that student contact, that student touch, while also being at a level where I can affect the culture of a place. And I think that if I found a role where I can do those, it would be phenomenal. Kind of being a decision maker, having that seat at the table, kind of being able to make things happen while also being able to still kind of break away and go meet with students and still have the same kind of relationships that I'm able to cultivate now. I think that would be perfect for me.
Well, I think that sounds fantastic. And I love that you are giving yourself some good advice for life design, the same advice that you're sharing with your students. So, what's some advice you might give to students who might want to do what you have done, who might be passionate about impacting change in their own communities?
Yeah, I have a line, and I wish I knew who said it. You might know who said it, but I always say unity is strength, knowledge is power, and attitude is everything.
I like that.
Because when you look at the strength that comes from collaboration and co-creation, I think it speaks for itself. Knowledge is obviously power. When you can arm yourself with the knowledge of something and you can become an expert or at least well versed in an area, that provides you with some power, some agency. Then attitude is everything. How you approach a situation, good, bad, and indifferent, it dictates how things might go. So even if you have the collaboration and the knowledge, if your attitude about a situation is not the best, it might not go as far as you want. So be mindful of how you approach situations and be mindful of opportunity that you have when you are faced with the challenge.
And what about students who might be interested in pursuing a career in student affairs or multicultural affairs? What advice might you give them?
Student affairs is kind of spread out. There's so many different places you can land. You can be in campus recreation. You can be in a counseling office. You could be in an office of multicultural affairs, leadership development. There's a lot of different places that you can land. So do a little bit of research, look at some schools, that you might just kind of know off of name recognition, go into their student affairs areas or their student engagement areas, kind of see what jumps out at you. I would encourage folks to go on to, there's a website, Higher Ed Jobs, that has all kinds of jobs listed out on university campuses. Click around, see what you like. And also don't hesitate to reach out to people. Of course, we're over here in Multicultural Affairs. We can talk to you about that, maybe a few other things. But before you get out there, definitely reach out and do a little bit of research. It's an amazing field. The reward is seeing those aha moments, seeing those students who you worked with walk across that stage in a couple of years. It's definitely a field that I would encourage folks to jump into. It takes a bit of a passion. It takes a bit of a love and wanting to see students develop. And I think that's going to be true of no matter where you choose to land, whether it be community learning and development, whatever it might look like.
Well, you mentioned that level of passion, and that is very evident in the work that you do. Such great advice for our aspiring leaders. So finally, Quincy, what message would you like to share with our Longwood community or beyond? Any last thoughts you'd like to share?
Yeah. If you're a Longwood student, drop by OMA. We'd love to see you sometime. And for those who, might not be Longwood students or are former Longwood students, be the change you want to see in the world. There's so much going on around us. I encourage you to keep yourself aware, and where you see an opportunity to make change, don't be afraid to stand up for what you believe in and be a part of that change.
Excellent advice, Quincy. It has been an absolute delight chatting with you today, and you have shared so many nuggets of wisdom and food for thought. And so thank you for your time today. We appreciate everything you've been willing to share. And I guess we can't wait to see what happens in Dr. Goodine's pathway. Perhaps we will have you back on in a future season to share more about your pathway.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right. And until next time, you all have a lovely day. Thank you for joining us for another episode of Longwood GradCast Beyond the Degree. We hope these stories have sparked motivation and empowerment, shining a spotlight on the incredible potential within Longwood's graduate and professional studies community. Leadership is in our blood. Is it in yours? We're here to support your educational journey and career aspirations. To explore our graduate programs and professional endorsement, head over to our website at longwood.edu/grad programs.